what do you do with that person it is what it is. It's toxic. It's cancerous. It's negative. It's woe is me. What can you do with that? So, you gave me the doctor on the nice lab coat there. So, back in the day, it would have been J.C. Baker.
Yeah.
Now it's Dr. J.C. Baker. So, 2020. What in the world, man?
Well, a lot of people are having a hard time with 2020. We saw it coming because we actually have a Filipino office, and so we knew it was coming, and so we were prepared. Now we've just been watching the world go upside down and around.
What's been your guys' biggest challenges here in 2020? With all the things you do, I know that you have J.C. Baker and Associates now. I don't know if that's the core, the big part of what your accomplishments or what you're doing, but what's that been like in 2020 with dealing with this environment?
Yeah, so we own the only business hospital in the world, and where that became important is that we really got into serving these businesses that really had no idea what to do. And so when you talk about businesses, that also leaks into just people. They're uncertain about, are they coming? Are they going? Is it virtual? Is it tangible? There's not enough solutions out there. So for us, we really morphed. We were one of the first to offer disaster relief services. And so our March and April and a big portion of May was really bogged down with just disaster relief. What do I do? What is the government saying as it relates to PPP or EIDL loans? And so we were out there really teaching the masses what they needed to do to stay afloat. Then all of a sudden the summertime came and we thought it would subside because the heat would come and that the virus couldn't live in the heat. But at that same time, the nation started to reopen and no one knew what to do then either. What are the policies? What are the protocols? Ohio is open, Kentucky shut down, Kentucky opens, Ohio shut down, Michigan has a problem. And so we're getting calls from everywhere trying to figure out what and how to do. So for us, we had to stay ahead of everything. So for us individually, it really hasn't been that bad as it relates to how to adjust, how to make sense of what we're dealing with. But it really became difficult navigating all the company and all the helps that they needed.
So do you think that, no one saw this coming, right, with COVID? We started hearing about it January, February. We took a big group to San Francisco, our company did, and we were proactively working on video and we saw some things coming, but we had no idea with this. How set up were you in your business when COVID times came that you were ready to jump with just a little bit of an adjustment to help people and to be where the market is?
Absolutely. Well, there's two things that we always deal with, which is your runway. And the runway is not just about the dollars, but it's also the vision map that allows you to see the future. So it seems like I'm talking prophetically here, but I'm not. What we know is things happen cyclically. It does not matter if it's a pandemic or if it's a terrorist attack or if it's a bank bailout, something's going to happen. So because of that, we understand company health and we were already healthy in that positioning. Well, number two, because we have an international presence and we do work in Asia, we saw everything happening there and we was able to dictate what was coming here. So we were constituted enough to make those moves. Ben Phillips is one of our practitioners. He runs our Filipino hospital. And so we learned a lot from what the Philippines was going through and then some of our connectivity in Japan as well. And so we said, you know what, it's more than a hypothesis that something's going to happen here and we better already be ahead of it. And we were able to do so. So really for us, it's about looking at the future and working yourself backwards, but we're also thinking worst case scenarios. In many cases, I got to invent worst case scenarios just because of what I do to make sure that my patients, if you will, are constituted appropriately. So we just apply that same logic to our own business practices.
Who's your perfect patient when you design who the perfect scenario or the perfect company, the perfect group of people to help?
It's not one. And that's why when we talk about being a business hospital, almost no one believes me when I say that. But if you stub your toe right now, if you cut your arm now, if you end up with a cold right now, you can go to the hospital and they'll have someone in that hospital that can help with all three of those ailments. You go to your dentist right now, whether you get your teeth cleaned or root canal, or you get a cavity filled, the dentist is equipped to help you there. We're no different. Our job is to make sure that you're as healthy as you can be as a company. So If you're a startup founder, if you're a mom and pop shop, if you're a Fortune 100 company, it does not matter. There's a health metric for every class and size of business, and we're industry agnostic in that way. Now, if it was just me, then there would be a special client because my personal skill set is in strategy and execution along with human capital. However, it's 20 practitioners that work in the hospital with another 10 interns that are global. So I've got help to provide these solutions and treatments.
So what do you think is being let's just take a medium-sized business. Let's say it's maybe medium in our marketplace here in Cincinnati, but let's say it's a 100-employee company.
Mm-hmm.
Where do they start first quarter of 2021? They've already been existent for 5 or 10 years, and they want to come to J.C. Baker and Associates. Where do you start? What's that process look like?
Yeah, so the first thing we always do is an assessment. And so that assessment derives from whatever you think your articulated pain point might be, coupled with things that we can see or that we've observed ahead of time. Then we do a diagnosis, and that diagnosis, we're going to look at where we think your ROIs come from. So when you talk about ROI, most people look at return on investment. It's not the only metric we look at. We look at return on innovation, return on interaction, and return on implementation. We're going to challenge those 3 other ROIs. Once we challenge those, then we give you a business physical. Once we're done with that business physical, we know exactly where all your ailments come from. Now it's time for you to do your rehab work. So even that 100-person company, we might look at and say, okay, what's your value proposition to the market? Is it antiquated, or does it have enough legs on it to last you another 5-10 years before you have to adjust and pivot again? And let's say, for an example, it's a new product development and you need to get it to market. Well, what does that look like in comparison to any of your competitors? And do you have enough resources to launch it appropriately? So that company, there could be a litany of things that we'll be testing, but all of it begins with our challenges.
So how did you figure out the business hospital? It's a new approach, right? So
Yeah.
as plugged in or as connected I could ever think I have been, it hasn't even come to my mind, right? Because I'm so busy just running the businesses every day. So what brought you to a place where you realized this was a need, this was a necessity for guys like me, guys like all these other business owners we know? What brought you here?
Well, when I went to get my PhD in business and leadership, one thing that really struck me while I was finishing my dissertation, which I did on transformational leadership and workplace effectiveness. So essentially, I had to set out to prove that there was a superior leadership style to every other leadership style for a host of reasons in the workplace, everything from job satisfaction to turnover. Well, in that case, as I was going through there, I said, well, where does anyone go to get help for any of this? How does anyone know what is what?
How do you learn? Yeah.
And so everything is whatever you want it to be, especially in our climate. Now, everything is subjective. It's how you feel about it. It's all of these emotional positions. And I said, well, you've got consultants, you've got coaches that will never go away. I said, but nobody talks to you about the health of your concept, the health of your business, the health of your structure, the health of your formations, none of it. And I said, but for your person, we do that. For your cat, you do that. I said, so why wouldn't you do that for your business? And it became really obvious that we needed to invent an industry, and we did. And when I say invent an industry, coming in 21 will be our new healthcare medical plans for businesses. We're also talking about our Business Hospital Plus, which is telehealth that can be done digitally. And so we own all the assets around the whole concept of a business hospital, which hopefully in a few years, you'll have people saying, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? They're going to say, I want to be a business doctor and work at a business hospital.
That's solid.
Yeah.
I love it. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
As me being in this grind of this real estate company and the different things I do for 13 years, I love the sound of that, man. I think the future is really bright for you guys. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, when you say transformational leadership, how does, the entrepreneurship word these days, boy, isn't it like the hottest thing ever in the last 5 or 6 years? Everybody wants to be a founder. They want to be CEO. They want to be an entrepreneur until they are. But I love it. I embrace it. I think people should step out and take a risk and take a chance and don't wake up at 65 and have all this regret in life. But so how do you know? Like how does that person know that they should have done it? How can they identify what type of a leader and they are the right transformational leader that you're talking about here?
Yeah, so you've got two different paths there in that question. I'm going to start with the leadership portion. Leadership is a real style that's not subjective, although the masses would have you believe that it is. You'll hear people say, well, what does good leadership mean to you? Or when you see a leader, how does that look to you? And it doesn't look like anything to you. There's a real style. And when I say style, don't know if you're a martial artist, but hopefully you can identify that if a person is taking Aimute Shotokan versus, judo, there's a certain stance or a certain kick and a certain punch that when another martial artist sees it, they know what style that is. Well, in that case, that means you know how to counter it. You know what result you're going to get. If you're an athlete, and let's say I was a football guy. So because I played football on the offensive side, you know what type of offense you ran. So you knew if it was West Coast, if it was power, if it was wing, you knew what plays went with that offense. Leadership is identical. We just don't speak of it that way. So transformational leadership was invented by Bas Navalio in 1978, has 4 constructs to them. One is inspired motivation, idealized influence, individual consideration, and intellectual stimulation. All 4 of those components make up the recipe, if you will, for transformational leadership. And that's as opposed to other styles such as autocratic, democratic, transactional, laissez-faire. I mean, there's literally 50 different styles. So what happens is we create what we think is leadership. None of them are really a style. So now you've got this gumbo of leaderships that aren't real, and you're getting a gumbo of manifestations in the workplace. So now everybody's all confused. So now it's all about, are you connected to a person, or if you just like that person, then you'll deem them a good leader. But none of that has anything to do with the style. So if you actually learn the style, you actually know what you can get in your output from your input. Now, when you transition that over to these founders, startup people, I'm my own boss, I'm the creator of myself, this new thing that we're into right now is that the way you know is if you specialize in something. The problem is, how do you know when you specialize in something? Mm-hmm. And there's a bunch of metrics to determine if you're actually an expert at it or if it's something you really like to do and that thing makes you happy.
Right.
We talk to about 90 businesses a month on average. Well, as we talk to them, they derive everywhere from a person that hates their current job and wants to create something, to a Fortune 100 company, to an international holding. Well, the individuals looking to create something, more times than not, they did it because they hated their boss. They don't like the way things are working. They've done a job for 10 years, so now they're the expert because they've done that job. And that doesn't qualify you to be an expert. But they've got the experience, and they're going to sell that experience, and they're going to go out there and find out that this world isn't what they thought. I'll give you a cute stat here. Yeah. 134,000 new businesses a day are created.
Is that in this country or worldwide, or what is that?
That's worldwide.
Okay.
So now out of that number, 42% of them fail in the first 6 months. All right, that is a massive, massive failure rate. When you're thinking, well, today there was 134,000. What will it be tomorrow? Another 134,000. What does that mean? People are here just willy-nilly creating stuff. I am going to be a business owner. And the reality is you have to understand what your value proposition is, what you bring to the table, and what you're an expert in.
So are you going to help them do that on the front end of starting the businesses, or do you think your expertise comes once they've already created it and they want to take the next step or go to the next level? Where do you think that is?
We're great at from A to Z because we're constituted to be great at A to Z. I get hired most times in stage 4 cancer. Things didn't go right. We don't know what to do. We're going to throw the Hail Mary. We'd much rather be on the front side where we're helping you build the foundation, understand your metrics, give you a vision map, and help you understand what you should and should not do to minimize those errors and exposures.
So of those 34,000, 42% of them fail in 6 months, right? Mm-hmm. So that's just a wild, wild number. So it's probably 50,000 businesses fail in 6 months, plus or minus. So do you think those people should go ahead and try? Is there something, so if they should go ahead and try, and we know there's going to be 42% anyway, if they should, because they're going to regret it if they don't, and maybe there's some learning that goes in there, what can you do to help them maybe to figure out, should they try? Can you do enough of that on the front end, or it just has to happen and the stats are going to be...
Well, trying is not emotional, and most people try out of emotion.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go for it. Mm-hmm. Well, no. Understand what you're going for. Mm-hmm. So therefore, you need legitimate information. Actually, as you see our 4 pills, we got information here, innovation there, ideation and imagination. Most important is the information. What tells you to try is the information that you have. Mm-hmm. So when you look at, okay, well, I've got this set up. I'm really good at this. I've already talked to some form of a market and they've adopted me at some level. And I extrapolate that amongst this other metric. Yep, I'm going for it. Now you do it without any regrets. But if it's just, man, I hate my boss, or I thought of something in my dream last night and everybody's going to love it, all that stuff will have you upset, bunch of money burned up. And then now you feel like a failure, scared to move forward from that standpoint. And someone like me comes along and says, hey, let's reimagine this. And you're too paralyzed to move now because you jumped out on emotion.
Do you think that, let's say it's 50,000 is the number in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you could help? Is your business set up? Is it a part of your goal and your value proposition? Do you think that there's a certain percentage of those, if they had the right adjustment, the right perspective, do you think you could help there be a better or more positive outcome?
Well, absolutely. I'll give you two perfect examples of that. I have an accountant that's a client, and because she's an accountant, she's a staple of the United States. Everyone needs an accountant. So whether it's for your daily bookkeeping or your annual tax returns or for your tax strategy, you need an accountant. So she has a business that in theory, if she runs it right, she doesn't have to fail. Doesn't mean that she'll be widely successful, but she could be sustainable and take care of herself. And so because of that, there's things that she needs to learn outside of just how to do a spreadsheet and accounts receivable and payable to make her successful. Well, on the other end, we have a lot of people on the innovation side that want to create something. And I say, unless you've got $15 million, you should not do this, right? And so we can help minimize your errors. And maybe we take 15 million down to 10 million, but heck, we saved you 5 million only for it still not to exist.
Yep. And
Right,
without
so
you, they might not even have gotten there. That's the point. It's like, man, your value proposition and what you can do to help people on the front end, it's tremendous. I think we see a higher failure rate in our own real estate business, a huge failure rate in 12 months. There's something like 200,000 or 300,000 new licensed realtors nationally every year. And 78% of those people give their license up within 18 months. And it's the same thing. It's like, man, if we have a value proposition as a company, it means that we've found some special sauce in there, ways that we can really integrate and help those people overcome this hurdle of, maybe your mind wasn't right, but hey, man, like, let's really get engaged and show you how to take this thing to the next level. Hey, your last book that you wrote is the last one, 2018, the Getting to Market with Your MVP?
No, the last one is actually how to make good business decisions. And I've been slothful on my edits. It was supposed to be released before Christmas, so it'll probably come out in mid-January. It's another textbook on how business people should make decisions. The one before that, my dissertation ended up becoming a published research document. And so that's 250 pages of high-level information as it relates to how to have leadership in the workplace. So the commercial one is the how to get to market with your MVP, which does the very thing you were just asking. What do I do before I start trying to create a business so that I can actually get to the market?
Yep. So that's very good reading that you would say, hey, I recommend picking up this book and making sure, like, you guys read this to try to give you some insight on, you'll figure out, like, do you have what it takes? Do you have the right plan? Do you need to call the business hospital? I mean, do you need some help? Because we all know we need help. And if almost every business owner had something like this on the front end of their business, man, they might have been able to cut out a learning curve of 2 or 3 or 4 years, maybe.
Well, in that case, when people talk about, investing in their business, what we know for a fact, it's so factual, or it's so prevalent that it's now morphed into a fact as opposed to being subjective. But almost no one wants to invest in information. They rather just, I'm going to swing the bat and figure out what happens from there. And that is not a good model for success. It's very much like shooting half-court jump shots, and some of them go in, but most of them will not. But you'll think it was a good shot because some went in.
Yep. So these days with YouTube and with so many different podcasts and so many people, what do you take? I mean, there's the top, you got Gary V's, and you might even have Eric Thomas out there, and Les Brown from back in the day, and Zig Ziglar. You have all these people that if you watch them for 30 minutes a day, man, they make you feel like you can conquer the world. They make you feel like you can just go do it. And the reality is, most of us, we're not like those 5 people, right? We don't have that DNA inside. So what do you recommend people do if we're being bombarded with, man, they're selling something, you can go do it, go buy my book, do this. What do you recommend someone who wants greater things other than the current job, projecting out what the next 20 or 30 years of their life looks like, the 3% increase? Where do you go? Where do they go for this information?
This is really a really good topic. I actually had 2 arguments on this very topic earlier today. And one of them was really goofy. I mean, it was the goofiest argument ever. We were arguing a traveling call in recreation basketball at 6 a.m, and somebody Googled traveling. And then the guy, the first article pulled up, because I don't ever go to Google for anything. My team knows it. And if they ever do research and they say, well, let's Google something, I don't want them working with me ever again. They know not to do that. Well, in that case, a guy in the gym Googles traveling. He pulls it up and says, see, Bake, you wrong. They call me Bake at the gym. Bake, you're wrong. And I said, you Googled that. So now you've got a blogger telling you what traveling is. I went further and said, y'all didn't even check the source. Now, this is the doctor in me. I'm checking the source, and it's a guy in Indiana who never played ball, who happens to like watching basketball, that was about 60 years old, who made that post. Yeah. I went to the NBA rule book and said, this is what traveling is. It's in section 10. If you look at it from letters F through H, you'll find all the different measures of traveling. We're not looking at the NBA. We're just guys in the recreation. Why am I giving you the argument? It's easy to YouTube something. Yep. It's easy to Google something. None of that is going to tell you how to get the job done. You say, why is that? Because business is not done in public. It's done in private. Let me give you an example. Zuckerberg didn't use Facebook to grow Facebook. He made his business in backdoor dealings with strategic things that he never told anybody else about. So what happens is you have to go to individuals that understand how to make business go. And so there's some of those things are legitimate strategies and others are subjective, but they're subjective based on the expertise of experienced individuals that actually create the business in your industry. That's the part that people aren't doing.
Yeah, so how's mindset play into this, right? So when you were telling me about the guy playing basketball at 6 a.m. this morning, like I'm just going to be honest, I already don't like him, right? Because we come across these people and it's just like, man, of course, because I guarantee this. You're like, well, of course, you're the one who did that. Mm-hmm. I almost guarantee it.
You're that guy.
Right? You're that guy who's going to do that. And so where's mindset come into this? So I had a call earlier today with our sales team, and we were talking about a mindset going into 2021. And there's two mindsets. There's all these new terms out here. So I brought up something last night. I put out a video, actually at 2 a.m. before I left the office, and said, guys, let me give you a little snippet on what tomorrow's third Thursday call is going to be. It's going to be about mindset, and there's a couple terms out here in society that I don't even know where they work. Like I'm a guy who I try to stay away from the crazy stuff, but I'll talk about anything. And it's toxic positivity. Like I've heard this term. And so then I dug deep. I'm not somebody like I don't like the term on the surface because I'm like, man, that's just that term. If that's your mentality every day, man, that thing goes deep. But let me pull it up and see what it means. So I dug into it. And people that are using toxic positivity, they're saying, hey, if you're trying to be too positive and tell me it's going to be okay and overcome and realize how good your life is, that you're not validating their feelings. And so I said, hey, listen, I can have empathy based on where you are and what you're going through. But if that's an attitude that you're looking to come up with a term that you're toxically positive to me, there's a lot of tough things going on there, and I don't know if you're somebody I can help.
Well, so in that case, your original question was about mindset.
Yep.
So when you talk about the mindset, everything in this world exists in the mind, even though there are other tangible realities at play against what's in your mind. The reason why I'm saying it that way is that it's cold outside. I don't know. We know it's 32 degrees. So by logic and by rule, things freeze after that. But you'll see someone with a short sleeve shirt on and someone else with a scarf and a hat. So what's the difference? Is the mentality of how they feel about either the numerical digit or how that feels to their skin. Okay, so what does that then mean? Is that some parts of our life are created in our mind in such a way that we will things to be because we are also energy or the spirit of a person. However you look at that, it's actually called electromagnetic radiation, which is why a guy like Tim Tebow wins everywhere that he goes, is because it's not so much about his throwing motion. It's the fact that when he shows up, things happen. Doesn't matter where Brady goes, his team will win because they take on the radiation of him. I know I use a lot of sporting analogies, but they make sense to me.
Yeah.
So in that case, that is a mindset thing, and that person travels with that no matter where they go. Then you've got the other part, which is the reality. Meaning what? Well, the reality is this is going to cost $2.2 million. And when I look in the bank, there's not $2.2 million there. So therefore, that's a real thing. So no matter how you feel about it, you got to acknowledge the fact that what is our financial health regarding this aspect with digits and numerals. So the mindset becomes, is that something we can overcome? And if a person is optimistic, then that means you'll start looking for solutions to make that happen.
It's that growth mindset, right?
It's the mindset part of it.
Yeah.
If a person is now pessimistic or they are always in challenge mode, then all of a sudden they look for every reason as to why they can't do it. Right. And so the mindset separates everything. A lot of time when we're talking about strategies, which is why we're not a consultant, people say, you're just like a consultant. Nope. We don't have milestones. We don't have scopes of work. We're not selling you a certain style of anything. Our job is to make sure that you're healthy, because your real estate company, and let's call competitor a real estate company, you're both doing real estate. You know, you got the MLS, you got a certain percentage, there's only so many houses available. Yep. It's a seller's time, it's a buyer's time. We know all that stuff.
We all exist within the reality of what the market really is.
Correct.
In the same
business. The
business.
difference is going to be the individuals and the mindset of the individuals inside of it. So they live in a different place than the other group does. Mm-hmm. So mindset's everything.
So what do you do?
I'm allergic to bad mindsets.
Yeah. So what do you do with someone that, if me and you were if you're on the basketball court at 6 a.m. and with the guys that you're playing with, and you have a different relationship with them than you have with people at the business environment, but if you're just talking to those guys, what do you do with that person it is what it is? It's toxic, it's cancerous, it's negative, it's woe is me. What can you do with that as a business hospital? What can you do with that as a leader, as a friend? What do you do to help those people?
Now, this is contrary to my studies, and this is contrary to what most people believe. It's just my own personal value proposition. I don't help anyone that doesn't want help. I completely ignore them, and I get away from them, and I don't want their ignorance, stupidity, weakness to rub off on me, and I'll say that out loud. I'm allergic to it, can't deal with it. Say, what do you mean? I've been in the education field from elementary through the collegiate sectors. I sit on a bunch of boards. I see people of all walks of life. The reason why I say I get away from the people that don't acknowledge the help is because all you're going to do is drag them. We're not in a position to drag. Our services, our expertise are for those that say, you know what, I kind of need some assistance. I kind of, ran my toe here, or you know what, I'm not certain about what I'm doing. I need you in this. Great, we can work with that person.
Yep.
The person that has all the answers, and we know they don't have all the answers, we're not dealing with that scenario.
Yep.
You can't pay me enough to deal with that. You'd have to pay me a number to where it doesn't matter what you say and what you do, and you're not going to be equipped to pay that anyway. Then you're going to scrutinize everything I do regardless. So I'm going to ignore you, period.
It might take 20 years of your life, even if you could accomplish the job.
Correct.
Yep.
Right. So therefore, we just ignore that, because the reality is I can't help every human.
Yep.
So why don't I just go find the ones I can help?
Yeah.
And that's what we spend our time
on. 100%. So, hey, your team of 20 people at the business hospital, how's that broken down? Are there pillars of expertise? What's that look like when someone comes and says, hey, Doc, we need help?
Yeah. So we've got different hospital wings. They're legitimate wings: commercialization, legal, IT, digital. I mean, we've got these wings that allow us to go in, assess, and then as the general practitioner, look at the macro aspects. I bring each practitioner in for their level of expertise to say, okay, how do we help in this way? What I can see from a general standpoint goes in that direction. What do you see are the actual steps? So we've got individuals that have PhDs. We have them that have bachelor's and master's in accountancy, or some that specialize in international business and affairs. So we have them in different layers in different areas. And so as we go in to help a patient, we're going to listen to what they think their issues are. But my practitioners help me say, they never mention this. There's no way possible that they're going to operate in a healthy manner, and they have ignored that part of the conversation for 15 minutes. We need to challenge that one aspect, and that's where they bring value to me.
Do you see yourself as an entrepreneur, like what you're doing?
Well, I didn't until I saw that that Frisch's Big Boy and Sugar Maple Creek won Entrepreneur of the Year. Said, how are they even entrepreneurs? Or I'm sitting at the Entrepreneurship Awards. I said, these are huge entities, and they're considered entrepreneurs. Changed my mentality from that standpoint. Now, we do have a lot of entrepreneurship in our business. I own 12 different companies underneath the umbrella of all things J.C. Baker and Associates, J.C. Baker Enterprises, J.C. Baker Management. So we do things like raise money for some of our projects. We create new inventions. We write patents regularly on things. And so that part of us is still very entrepreneur-like. But a big portion of that is because we know the infrastructure of how to build companies, and we still have other passions. So we see something, as long as we can resource it, we go for it, is what we do. We don't allow it to be a distraction. but we don't ignore it either. And so we temper that, and we keep our entrepreneurship hopes alive.
So this expertise, this confidence, this approach that you have, right? You're very skilled.
Mm-hmm.
What's the process of that? So if we look at Dr. Baker as a early 40s, if I'm correct in that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Professional, past athlete, like what's that process? Were you always this confident? Were you this right? Were this educated mind? What is that?
Yeah, I my background started in sales. I was number one in sales in 5 different industries. Did mortgages when I first got out of college, while I was still working out for different pro teams. And I chose mortgages because I figured, well, heck, you can't make calls till late, and that's back when it was the wild, wild west. So you could have 327s, 228s. You could no income, no asset verifications. We did whatever we wanted. It was rootin' and tootin' back then,
Yep,
right?
2000 to 2005 or something.
Yeah, so I mean, but mine was 2000, 2001.
Yep.
Right, so we could do whatever. And so I was going in and I would say, hey, I get my loans processed in the morning. I go work out midday. I nap, come back, make phone calls. And I'll call to the 9 o'clock time when you couldn't call anymore. Well, my point of saying that is I learned from 1994 how to be a high-level salesperson. Then I hop industry from industry, being number one and winning awards, finding out that, heck, they're all the same. Right, once you learn traditional practices and principles, combine that with work ethic and some level of IQ, you can actually be very successful. So from there, the more that I started to morph it was, but I'm not really an expert in anything. I'm just out here selling my buns off. So then I started working in the corporate and looking at what that looked like. And I hated corporate. I just hated the bureaucracy, the red tape, and how slow everything moved. And if you had something new, nobody would even care. And it was, well, that is kind of counterintuitive, because you go to the company meeting and they tell you, we're going to take over the world and we're first class, we're going to do things right. And like, no, you're not. You're not trying to do that at all, or you implement this thing. So I decided to get credentialized out of that. And so I started writing books. I went and got certified in finance, and, I enrolled to finish my master's en route, and I double timed that to get my PhD. And before you knew it, it was, no, there's an expertise that I can morph with all my collective experiences. And all that did was bring on new opportunities to see how the rest of this world operates. So we took a hold of it and started running at full speed. Now we're at a place where we create the narrative. We're so far ahead of most people that we're talking about things that'll happen 5, 6, 7 years from now, when they're just now seeing it today. And that's a good place for us to be in.
So all that experience of all the places that you said, man, you're not living up to what your ideals, your values are. It seems like this Dr. J.C. Baker thing has turned into like a purpose-driven life.
Mm-hmm. It is, and we call ourselves a knowledge society. I told a client earlier today that we work 7 days a week, and he couldn't believe it. He said, even through the holidays? I said, yeah, through the holidays. Now, to some people, they think that that would be terrible. I said, that doesn't mean I work all day, every day. It just means that every day there's something for me to learn. There's something for me to discuss. There's something for us to see, but that's a part of the knowledge society. We don't go a day without research. We don't go a day without having some meaningful dialogue about something that matters and that's significant. That speeds up who we are. So just like exercise is 7 days a week for me, so is understanding, learning, and exploration. So it turned into that type of purpose for us.
So was that natural inside of you? So it seems like, a couple words that aren't real popular in our society now that used to be when I was coming up. We're close to the same age, like hustle and grind.
Yeah.
I still have it in my office because those are positive things to me. And it's not hustle and grind through a sale and not do what's right. It's just like I got to hustle and grind every day to put more hours into the next guy so my learning curve can accelerate. So I'm going to put in 10,000 hours at the same time somebody else is putting in 2. And so is that a principle at all that you hope that your clients or your patients come to you with? And it's like, man, hey, if we're doing this 7 days a week and it's what you got to do to deliver the right foundation in business for your clients or for your patients, don't the same things need to happen at their level combined with
your you would hope so. And that's the difference between all people. That's the separator, is that when we talk about the hustle and the grind part of it, I look at it a little bit differently. It's going to sound similar, but I use a different terminology. Is what are you chasing? So you become the thing that you're chasing. So for me, let's say if it was sports, well, as a middle schooler and a high schooler, it was, how do I get to college? Growing up in Detroit, Michigan, we call that mildew and mold. We didn't see a whole lot that was positive. It was, how do we go get something that we never had and no one else ever had it? Well, there's a certain chase that comes with that. So when guys are like, hey, let's go do some other things, you're like, well, if I go do other things, somebody else is getting faster than me. They're taking my scholarship from me. Now that bubbles inside of you and you go chase something. Well, when I got to college, well, we were chasing NFL dreams by then. So therefore, you do that. Then once your professional days end, whether it ends the day you graduate, no one signs you, or the day you get cut, you're chasing something else. So for me, it was, well, what am I? What am I now chasing? So for us, we always pick something else to chase. It's not dollar related. It's significance related. So there's things in my family that no one's ever done that I've done. I look at my daughters and they say, okay, Dad, can I own a business? Yeah, Dad has 9 of them. Hey, Dad, can I get a degree? Yeah, Dad has the highest degree you can get. Dad, can I write a book? Yeah, Dad's written 6 of them. So it's not something for me to tell you as bragging. I got people watching me saying, I wonder if I could ever do that. So we keep chasing things. And there's always something else to chase.
So that's partly your job. So the question is, this big question. It could be the top podcasters, but this question, there's a guy named Patrick Bet-David. He's a Valuetainment, if you've ever seen him. Mm-hmm. Right? He's doing some good stuff. And, Rogan's been out there forever. He actually has some knowledge behind him, even though he's a UFC guy and all this.
Yeah.
Right? But he's got some knowledge if you listen to some of his stuff. But it's like, hey, was that in your DNA? Was there a Dr. Baker for you?
Well, I would say my dad is a part of it, but not at my same level. My dad had it in one portion. I think I'm more balanced than that. But he was the first person to show. Now, how, and I don't know if this was your reality, but when I was your age, I walked 28 miles to school with no shoes on, but like my dad did. Like we didn't have our first cars till I was almost in high school. We didn't go to dinner one time until I graduated high school, and that was at Fridays. My father never took a day off of work, and he worked downtown at the post office. And I watched him walk downtown or take the bus, right? And so when I looked at that, and as he was a mail clerk, he's going to retire in February. I've been asking him forever to retire. He just wouldn't. He says, well, I actually have so many days off. They said, I could have just retired 2 years ago, and they'll just pay me for the next 2 years. And I said, well, that's goofy that you didn't do that, Daddy. Like, well, what else am I going to do? He'd been going there so long. Well, the point is, he showed me that part of it, to where it was okay. If you want to accomplish something at a high level, you put one foot in front of the other and you go. Well, for my practitioners, I tell them, don't go out here and tell people you're an expert and you're not an expert. You walk in the room, be an expert. Some people say, well, if you're the smartest person in the room, leave the room. No, some of these rooms, we have to be the smartest people because that's what we're getting paid for. So therefore, you better chase knowledge at a level that other people aren't willing to chase the knowledge.
So can you be that? Yeah. So can you be that now? So let's jump ahead. What do you think the average? What's average age, average experience? Give me an average age of your patients. Is it 40 years old? Is it 35? Is it 28? I know it's everyone.
You know what? I would probably say that they're probably in their 30s.
Okay. So here's my question. So your dad, assuming Mr. Baker, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he was that for you as a young boy, as a child, and I don't know how verbal he was. He probably just got up every day and did it, and you learned by seeing him do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Led by example. So you learned that at an early – say the best time to learn a language when you're a young baby or a kid and young. Best time to be able to learn to play a musical instrument when you're young.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get involved with these 35-year-old people if they didn't have a Mr. Baker to think the right way?
It depends on where their hunger is coming from now. And so you actually forced me to reflect on the age because I never thought about it in this way. But 20-year-olds come out with a lot of ambition, but they haven't done much. So in their mind, especially today, there's a lot of entitlement. It's, I don't need this, I don't need that. I can just go and do it myself, exist in them. Then when you tell them something costs $200,000, they're looking around like, why don't somebody just give me the money? And it's like, well, it just doesn't grow out of the ground that way. You've got to actually do some things for that money to show up. 50, 60, 70, they're not as ambitious anymore. They kind of slow that train down and they're just holding on so they can go stop.
Yep.
So now that I'm thinking about, well, you've got people trying to climb the mountain. You turn 34, 35, 36, you're trying to hit that next plateau at that company. And you're trying to pull something off that's going to show favor for you.
Yep.
Or you've been working for 10 years at a place or 4 places over 10 years. You've hated all 4 of them. And you're like, well, heck, I'm going to go do it myself now. I'm 32 and I got a wife and I got to figure some stuff out, but I got a couple bucks on me. I'm going to go figure it out. We get a good mix of that. The corporate person that's got something to lose, or the person like, yeah, I'm going to really step out on faith this time.
So you got to be Mr. Baker. So if we get you 10 clients or no clients or 1 client from this or patients, that realizes like, man, I need to go to the doctor. I got to go to the business. So that's the responsibility you got.
Absolutely. And what's funny about that, and I tell my team, is that it does not matter what we say. A lot of times they're looking at what we're doing in that way. And I always tell our clients, they always ask us, give us an example of who you've worked with. And they want those examples. And I say, well, heck, do you ask your gynecologist that? Like, I'm your doctor. So I'm under NDA with pretty much all my clients. I say, this is how you determine it. What's inside of you? Where are you trying to go? Do you know how to get there? And are we speaking to the very thing that you're deficient in? You should be able to see that if you've been chasing it.
If they're asking you who your typical client is, they need to be one.
Exactly right. And they'll do that. And it's, well, no, I'm speaking to everything that you have a problem with. That's how you know something is real. We're not selling you what we have. You've told us something. We said insert. And oh, by the way, you didn't say that, but you also have a problem with that too, don't you? How did you know that? Because we know what we're looking at.
Yep.
That's how you know. But a lot of times they're not sure what they should look at. And so now you start looking in the wrong directions. Once again, I'll give you another football analogy. But, there was a time, guys like Chad Johnson would say, I used to watch films of this guy until I got so good that watching films of that guy didn't help me anymore. Right. Yep. So what does that then mean is that he knew what to look for. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of times business owners don't know what to look for. So they're looking at all the wrong people thinking, oh, I should use that solution because it was on social media or it's on Facebook, not knowing that or YouTube that stuff's not all real. Right. You can try to emulate someone else. And it's like, well, do you know how they actually got their money? You're not willing to do what they did to get their money.
Yep.
But we've been in back rooms and we're like, oh, that's where it came from.
Yep. The thing that's talked about your income and your success is similar to the top 5 people you hang around and you spend the most time with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you feel about that in your wife? I know that it's exactly evidence in my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this challenge. I was poor. I was poor, didn't have a lot of money. That's probably the hustle and the grind part, right? Mm-hmm. But a part of it. Great mom, not a good dad. But I look back at some of the people I was friends with when I was 20 and 22 and 20. It's not that I don't like them. It's not that I don't remember where I was.
Mm-hmm.
But I've just gone to a new place. I'm not forgetting where I came from. I just got to a new place.
Mm-hmm.
And I look back and I look at these 3, 4, or 5 people I spend this amount of time with. And, man, it's because, to your point, you level up to the people you're with. And if you want to go to the next level, you got to start getting around different levels of talent, people that know more than you. And so is that something you think that it's pretty exemplary of what maybe you went through, of what your clients could go through? If you got to level up, you got to get around some more people, some different people.
Well, in that case, I say it's correct, especially in this instance. There's a lot about international business that I'm still uncertain about. Even though we've done work in 8 countries, 5 continents, we're about to do a large deal. We just got agreements, a large deal in Brazil, 1,000 manufacturers out there. There's still things in Brazil that I'm uncertain about, but we have a Latino wing. So therefore, I'm thankful for Renan Delgado that he can walk us through the culture. He speaks the language. He's telling me things that there's no way possible I would have known. I've never been there. I don't have a great historical reference for it. We understand the business practices. So we know how to infiltrate those. Here's my point, is that in order for me to level up in Brazil, I better know someone that's already leveled up in Brazil.
100%.
Right. And so therefore I have to be under Renan and say, Renan, you take the lead on this one, because I have to learn from you so that when we get the next one, then the next one, now I understand what that looks like. And so that's very much the case. Now, when it comes to your individual success, I always make this statement to anybody that's in my close circles. I say, you're responsible for your own future. No one else is. So you better create the image for that future, and then you better find out how to go access it. That's my reality.
That's a serious high level of self-awareness, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
To really be able to get there and go there.
Absolutely.
And so
that you look at it and say, that's the GPS. There it is right there.
Yep.
Now, I may not know all the terrain. Well, I better go find out who's been there.
Yep.
And I better make sure that I'm protected so that I can get there.
So is there a part of your 4 pillars behind the ideation, imagination, where someone comes to you and they've got the work ethic, they have the passion and the drive, but they're missing this piece of self-critique, self-awareness? What can you do to help those? Because I see that so much with agents that get into our industry and our business. It's like, guys, you've got a lot of these pieces, but this it factor, they don't want to go there and do this self-awareness practice because it makes them feel so bad about themselves. They become so their self-confidence drops. So what do you do to help those people with that piece?
Well, we deal with, and I talk about this a lot in my last book, How to Make Good Business Decisions, but we deal with metacognition. Metacognition is the science of thinking about what you think about. So in that case, that skill set in your brain doesn't even exist till you're around 11 to 13 years old, in that range. Then, your prefrontal cortex doesn't develop till you're almost 26. So even though you develop the ability to think about things, you still can't process what you're thinking about, even as a young adult. So in that case, what does that actually mean? Is that when we're thinking about how do we challenge people in that way, it's about question asking, forcing them to rhetorically say, I never thought about that. I didn't know that. Man, I am deficient there. Now, once they start questioning it themselves, they have to question it away from you. Like, man, Doc today said, he asked me a question. I had no idea how to answer that. I don't even know where to go get the information to answer that. Maybe I'm not as good as I thought. Maybe I don't know what I don't. So I don't even know what I don't even know. So now that awareness hits, now you can insert new knowledge.
That's the ideal person that you can take to the next level.
Absolutely.
Right.
Because now we're like, okay, we can open up these ranges. I practice arguing all the time. I don't care if it's Jordan versus LeBron. I don't care if it's Democrat versus Republic, if it's vaccine, no vaccine. I can make an argument for or against almost anything on the planet. You say, well, why do you do that? Because I'm aware of the fact that the range of variables and possibilities are so infinitely past my knowledge scope that I take the time to exhaust those. Well, what does that then mean as well? Is that once you start asking the right questions, you get better answers. And that's what people have to get to, is that once their mind is open, now we can get some better answers. There's not one way of doing anything. That's why you can win a title with any offense. What happens is it's what are the possibilities and which ones can I execute? That's what you're looking for.
Too much of a limited ideology, right? Too much of a constrained mind just ain't going to work. You've got to release. Correct. You got to release that ideology and have a curious mind, and care about finding a best practice. Maybe.
Have you ever seen the movie Hacksaw Ridge?
Yes.
Phenomenal movie. Absolutely loved it. And what was amazing about that movie, especially for anybody that's listening that's never seen it, please watch it. But he went into the Army to go save lives as a medic. And they said, no, son, you got to carry a gun and you got to shoot one. He said, no, my religious beliefs will not allow me to ever hold a firearm, but I'm enlisted in the Army because my brother did it and my dad did it. And lo and behold, I have to do it because I'm a man in his family. I'm going. Well, he goes, he saves everyone, not just the Americans. He's saving individuals from the Viet Cong. He's saving everyone.
Yep.
So well, how's he doing that? His mind was open to other solutions in the war. So when people just understood a gun, well, they were dying as soon as they got off the boat. He wasn't. He was hiding inside of cadavers. He understood how to climb in trees in ways that people didn't. Point is, his mind had expanded, made him more effective. So asking questions allows you to do that.
How patient? So this term patience is starting to we're in this instant gratification society, and we really are. I'm not just playing on words. I see it every day. And I'm like, man, just don't quit. You don't see it. I've seen it, but 6 more months, you're right there. You're on the precipice. How much does patience play into this thing, even on your patience on the process of their evolution?
Patience is everything. Because we were just talking about this with Joe Biden. Said, man, this guy ran 3 times. He's been a career politician. Finally, he hit the mountaintop. I'm not saying this because I'm a Biden supporter or not. I'm not telling the story for that purpose. Yep. I'm telling the fact that this guy just kept going. It just kept going and kept going. And before you know it, he's going down in the annals of history. If he'd have just quit in the 90s, he's cooked now, right? So you got these realities where you don't know what you don't know. So because you don't have a crystal ball that sees it all, you got to stay the course. Now, here's how you know when to get off the course. It's based on the value proposition of what you made your decision for, all the pros and cons that you intentionally and deliberately sought out, and then what you expect to gain at the end. So therefore, some things are worth dying for. If I never do it, I'm going to do it every day till I die, one way or the other.
Is the outcome possible?
What's that?
Is the outcome possible?
Right. If the outcome's possible, some things is worth dying for. Other things are, no, we need to fail fast, right? And so as a business hospital, a lot of times I go in and say, hey, here's your realities. You keep going the course, your end is ultimate death. However, right, you're going to experience these things along the way, or you'll never get there. So because you never get there, do you want to cut this now, or do you just want the experience of doing it till it dissolves? Right? But patience is still the key for all of it.
So what should I, not having my PhD, not being a high profile wide receiver in college, on some probably shotgun or 5 or 18 wide receiver offense, right? But so, what should a guy like me ask you? What's in your mind that I don't even comprehend that's there?
I think it's how much legitimate information are we packing in our minds, or are we believing the world based on how we see it ourselves? What is your perspectives? So in that case, most of us have an internal worldview. And in having that internal worldview, it limits your ability to legitimately scale. Because ultimately, when we talk about scale doesn't mean you just made more money. Scale means you're growing to a place that you saw in your mind that allows you to interact in the world the way that you've selected. So for some people, that's less work time because they've doubled their income, so they can actually be at home more and do less later and those types of things. Others want to have more locations. Others want to be able to be put in the Hall of Fame or whatever it is that they're into and win all the awards. That's going to be defined differently for every person. But looking away from your own internal perspective and saying, okay, how many perspectives have I missed becomes vitally important. And we find that almost no one really does that. And I'm not saying that to speak out of hyperbole. I do it every single day. And well, you know what I think about? You know how I feel? And that everything you say is an I. You never talk about the possibilities of what else could be. And that answer is no. They don't even think about that. Mm-hmm. We had a client earlier today, a potential patient rather. They want to do this thing for universities. And I looked and said, who's going to benefit from that? But it's really important. I said, it's important because you deemed it was important. This one department will never see that as important. And this other one won't even pay for it because they've got something else that's contrary to that. They're going to look to nix you immediately. Right? I never thought about those things because you were only thinking about you.
Yep. What's the market going to say about this? And it's tough to get out of our own mind because at the end of the day, in business, and you being a doctor of business health now, should help people evaluate like, hey, this idea, this thing, you love it, your friends love it. Everybody you talk to that loves you is going to tell you they love it because they don't want to let you down. But how relevant is it to the marketplace? Can you get outside of it enough and say, is this really needed? Is it necessary? Is it a legit product?
Well, what's nuts is even if it is, you still have to determine who's the leader in that space. Mm-hmm. That leader in that space may say, no, we don't want a new entrant. We're just going to extinguish you. Mm-hmm. Even if the market is saying, we got to have it, we'll pay everything for it. The leader in that market might say, nah, we kept people sick for a reason. And here you are trying to give them the cure. Mm-hmm. Now we'll just eliminate you, even though we all know it's a benefit. Mm-hmm. And you have to be conscious of that.
100%.
And that means your scope has to be wider.
Yep. I said that years ago. I don't ever want to think we're too big for our britches, but we'll sell 1,500 homes in the next 12 months. Our company, we're grabbing market share. We're growing like crazy. But I recognized this thing 13 years ago when I had this idea, right? I was one of those people. I was an agent at the biggest company in town, and I saw all these principled ways that just weren't right in my mind. As an agent, didn't think the company looked out for the consumer. I thought there was this better way to pivot away from what the business was. And I realized in 2 or 3 years, once we sold enough homes just to pay the bills, and I had to quit eating dirt, I realized you know what the top company should do right now? They should come bury me. Mm-hmm. Because I was starting to develop something that was relevant for the market, and they should have seen it. So that might be a piece to also the business hospital to say, hey, listen, you want to grow, but who else is out there that's going to be in this space? You were relevant 10 and 15 and 20 years ago like Kmart was before Walmart came.
Yeah.
Right? So what do you have to do to defend it, to move forward? So I think also somebody shared with me the other day to get your perspective on this. I was talking to a social media coach out of Dallas. This guy's booming. He specialized in realtors and mortgage loan officers. Now he's broadening it to helping all entrepreneurs because the social media game's real now. It just is. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, man, Indianapolis is coming. Columbus is coming. This thing's growing. And I said, this is what the next 36 months look like. He said, too slow. And I said, what do you mean too slow? He's like, too slow, man. He said, because you have something relevant to the marketplace right now in 5 years, you might not. But I said, man, I know, but the reality is the right pace, the right growth. And he said, listen, man, if this thing is as special as I believe it is, and you think it is, you owe it to the people that you haven't even gotten to yet to have and experience this thing. So how much inside of an entrepreneur, inside your patients, should they do it out of an altruistic reason of not just making money? If you think this thing's special, you owe it to them to put in more hours. You owe it to them to go out and extend yourself. You owe it to them to be driven by some purpose beyond you.
So it depends on how that whole thing is being financed and what that bottom line is going to look like later. Because, I mean, no matter what, and this is the bad part about my work, and I just was telling someone earlier today, because they have a philanthropic nature toward their business, I tell them I don't. My job is to tell you got cancer. It's hard for me to do anything else past that point, is I have to be straight up with you, tell you where you are. You go ahead and you try to launch something because it's a benefit to the people and you lose 300 grand, well, you're the loser in that one.
That's real.
Right.
That's real.
So therefore, we're not dealing. And if you got to go out and you got to create something that costs 1.5 to get it out there and you don't have it, and you got to go on a bunch of fundraising rounds in order to accomplish that, it might take you 4 years to get to market, because they're going to ask you, what's your proof of concept? Where's your MVP? You know, how much traction do you have? Let me see your beta testing results. They're going to ask you stuff that you don't have answers to. And then you're going to look dumb in front of the investors. Right. So it's always a chicken and the egg play in that instance, unless you already got the money. Right? If you already got the money and that money's disposable, and yeah, I mean, and there's people out there that can, which tricks the masses. They'll see someone, Gary V, man, just go out there and do it. But yeah, you got money from your pops a long time ago. No, we didn't start with that. Now you got money sitting in the bank at a level to where if you decide to just chuck it, or you want to do a crowd fund, everybody's going to jump on your horse and give you money to do so. And you're going to leverage their money. And if it fails, they lost, you didn't.
Yep.
And you'll end up telling the story about how failure is good. They're going to buy that too.
Yep.
Right. So your scenarios are different than the person that cashes in a second mortgage on their home to launch something now.
So what's your piece about this failure thing, right? You brought up a great point. Is it essential? Can we succeed without having that piece? Like, what is it?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have to have it? Because it's expensive. I mean,
yes.
I've learned the most things from my failures in life. I truly have. But, man, it is expensive. It's expensive emotionally.
Some failures are too chunky. They're just entirely too chunky to deal with. They weigh you down so much, you never get away from them. Right? So there's different forms of failure. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of times that business and business owners are failing in ways that can legitimately be catastrophic. I mean, let's not play around with it. Divorce, suicide, mass killings, all those things can come from failures in business
that are totally outside of your control. A lot of times, there are some things that are you just can't control.
Yeah, but they don't know that. The heart doesn't know that.
Yep.
Right? You mess around and hit a massive failure and got to lay 8 people off that you cared about during Christmas times. You would jump off a bridge.
Yep.
Right. So therefore, it's not about failure. Blah. Save the speeches. Let's look at this stuff with logical eyes and say, okay, we're making decisions for all the right reasons. And what we're going to leave left are the unknown factors, and just play the result from the unknown factors.
So here's what I've learned from the past, I don't know if it's an hour, man. I haven't been keeping time. But here's the thing. You being the leader of your business hospital, you say whatever it is, you're a leader of this system, this thing you've created to help people. You've got the goods. Mm-hmm. All right, I'm around a lot of business people, and you've got the goods and the mind and the understanding, man. And it comes from a lot of experience. So I'm excited for me to just sit back here and try to help some agents build some careers and sell a few houses and make a couple of dollars. I think you guys can do big things to help people, man. I'm excited to have a conversation. If I could help 10 people understand your platform, the business hospital approach, my mind wasn't even on it. It really wasn't. That's what I said at the beginning. So I'm pumped about what you can.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
We actually exist to assist. Yeah. We're a hospital. If anybody has a business, they don't know what to do, just call us. Our assessments are free and our diagnoses are free. Think about that. We're nuts. You mess around and ask Dan Locke, he'd be mad at me. Mm-hmm. Right? Grant Cardone wouldn't like anything that I'm doing.
Oh, you mean GC and his G550 flying all around the country that he spent $61 million for and giving you a tour of his plane, and not that guy?
Not that guy. I mean, literally, you're going to get 2 free services before I even tell you what your treatment plans are, because we legitimately want to help. That's just literally how we operate.
That's huge, man. I love it. So, hey, how can people find everything, the business hospital approach, JC Baker? How can they find everything? Where should they connect?
jcbaker.org.
Okay.
If they do that, they've won. They can even put in something, and then we'll call them from there. If they want to call us, it's 833-JC-Baker. Not hard to find us. Put in Dr. JC Baker on LinkedIn, they'll find me. right? I mean, you can find us. Email us, drbaker@jcbaker.org. Trust me, they'll find it.
It's like you're playing that in your sleep, man. That ain't
It's
even
just
written on
there.
the board.
It's just there. We made it so easy that just jcbaker.org gets you everything you ever wanted.
Hey, do you do that at 6 a.m. running up the court when they're talking trash and saying stuff? Do
They
you
don't
just say
talk more than me.
jcbaker.org, baby? Just go there
They
and
don't talk more than me. I can tell you that, Mike. No, I'll talk them all out their game.
I'll solve
That's a
I'll solve all your problems and your jump shot included. jcbaker.org. Well, hey, man, this is fantastic. I love you after an hour and a half, man.
Hey, you got it. Anytime that you guys need me, I was happy that Mike called to tell me that you guys were doing it. It's been a privilege, and I'm excited to be around.
We love it, man. Hey, we'll put some links up here where people can connect with you, and hopefully we can connect in the future, but help people save their businesses and their life, man, 2021.